Just tell him it's over and watch him beg, her friends pushed. I'll never forget those words. I stood in the doorway of our own living room, frozen, listening to my wife and her little circle of wine-soaked friends laugh about the plan. They thought I was upstairs, sound asleep. They thought they were safe. Patrick will crumble, one of them giggled. Men like him always do. You'll have him wrapped around your finger before he even realizes what's happening. My wife, Helen, swirled her glass of Merlot like she was some queen sitting on a throne. You think so? She asked, pretending to hesitate, though I could hear the excitement in her voice. Oh, absolutely, another chimed in. Just tell him it's over. He'll panic. He'll cry. He'll promise you the world. And when he begs, that's when you'll know you've won. They all laughed. A cruel, smug laugh that rattled through me harder than any punch to the gut ever could. I stayed in the hallway, my heart pounding, jaw clenched. 22 years of marriage, and that's how they spoke about me, like I was some pathetic dog they could kick and watch whimper. But I didn't storm in. I didn't shout. No, I smiled. Because right then, I decided something. If she wanted a performance, I'd give her one. Later that night, she slithered into our bedroom with that rehearsed look of sorrow plastered on her face. She sat at the edge of the bed, her back turned toward me. Patrick, we need to talk. I sat up slowly, steadying my breathing. About what? Her voice trembled, not from guilt, but from the thrill of her little game. I don't think this is working anymore. I think we should end it. I stared at her, letting silence fill the room until I could feel her shifting nervously under the weight of it. She was waiting for tears, for pleading, for me to collapse into a heap at her feet. Instead, I grinned. A slow, deliberate grin that spread across my face until she finally turned, startled. Perfect, I said, my voice calm, steady. Now the other girl doesn't have to hide anymore. Her eyes widened. She blinked once, twice, trying to process what I'd just said. And from downstairs, faintly through the floorboards, I heard it, her friend's laughter dying in an instant. The silence that followed was heavier than any shouting match we'd ever had. Helen's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her hands trembled in her lap. She thought she'd set the trap. She thought she was about to watch me beg. But in one sentence, I'd flipped her entire game upside down. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been playing my own game for months. And the ending? Oh, the ending was going to be nothing like the one they'd scripted in their little wine-stained fantasies. Helen's face drained of color. What do you mean? She stammered, her voice a fragile whisper. I leaned back against the headboard, arms folded, as if I'd just dropped the weather report. I mean, sweetheart, now that you've ended things, I don't have to feel guilty anymore. The other woman doesn't have to sneak around. No more hiding. Her mouth opened and closed like she was searching for air. I watched her throat tighten as she swallowed hard. You're lying, she finally hissed. You're just saying that to hurt me. Am I? I tilted my head, smiling. Funny thing about lies, they usually come with details. Want me to tell you her name? Where we meet? What she wears when she walks into the room? Helen shot up from the bed, pacing across the carpet. She was trembling now, her mind working overtime to untangle what she thought was a carefully planned script. This isn't funny, Patrick, she snapped, her voice higher than usual. I'm not laughing, I replied smoothly. But your friends downstairs sure stopped, didn't they? Her eyes darted toward the door. She hadn't realized I'd overheard them. That was the first crack in her armor. I pressed on, voice low and steady. You thought you'd break me tonight. You thought I'd cry, beg, maybe even offer you the house just to keep you. Instead, I gave you something you weren't expecting, doubt. Now you can't be sure of anything I do, anything I say. And that, Helen, is a much scarier game than the one you and your friends cooked up. She spun to face me, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. So it's true? You've been cheating on me? I didn't answer right away. I just let the silence wrap around us like a noose. Then I chuckled softly. That's the beauty of it. You'll never know for sure. She gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. The woman who had always prided herself on control suddenly looked like a child caught in the dark. I stood, walking slowly toward her, each step measured. She backed away until she hit the dresser. You wanted to see me beg? I said, leaning close enough for her to see the cold in my eyes. Instead, I'm going to watch you sweat. Every time my phone buzzes, every time I step out for an hour, you're going to wonder, is he with her? Did he mean what he said? Or was it all a bluff? She shook her head violently. This isn't fair. It was supposed to be you begging, not me. Supposed to be? I raised an eyebrow. Who wrote that script? You? Or your little peanut gallery downstairs? Her cheeks flushed, caught between rage and shame. She hated being exposed. I walked back to the bed, picked up my pillow, and headed for the door. I'll be in the guest room tonight. You know, in case I get a late-night message from her. Wouldn't want to wake you. Her voice cracked as I left. Patrick, don't do this to me. Tell me the truth. I paused at the door, glancing over my shoulder. The truth. I smirked. The truth is, Helen, you should have thought twice before making me the fool. Because now, you'll never know if I was one. The door shut behind me with a click, and as I lay in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling, I could hear her pacing, crying, muttering to herself. She wanted control. She wanted a performance. Now she had neither. What she didn't realize was that this was only the opening act. Tomorrow, I'd take the game into the daylight. And by the time I was finished, Helen and her friends would regret ever daring me to beg. The next morning, Helen was already at the kitchen table when I came downstairs. Her coffee sat untouched, her hair still tangled from a sleepless night. She looked up at me the moment I walked in, eyes bloodshot, face pale. Patrick, she said quickly, about last night. I poured my own coffee, taking my time, stirring in cream like I hadn't heard her. What about it? Her hands fidgeted around her mug. I just need to know. Was it true? Do you really have someone else? I sipped, smacked my lips, and shrugged. Depends on what you mean by someone else. A woman who actually listens when I talk. A woman who doesn't laugh at me behind my back with her friends? If that's what you mean, then yes. I've got someone. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Who is she? I leaned across the counter just enough to watch her squirm. You really think I'd give you that? So you and your friends can pick her apart over Chardonnay? Not a chance. Her voice cracked. So it's real. I just smiled and walked past her, my silence louder than any answer. By lunchtime, I knew she couldn't resist running to her friends. I didn't even have to follow her. She invited them over. 3 of them, sitting in our living room like it was their work council. I stayed in my office upstairs, door cracked, listening. He said it right to my face, Helen sobbed. That he has someone else. One of her friends gasped, feigning sympathy. But he's bluffing, right? He's just trying to scare you. Another snorted. Come on, Helen. Look at him. When's the last time you two, acted like a married couple? He probably does have someone. Men his age get desperate for attention. I could practically see Helen wringing her hands. But he's never been like that. He's steady. Predictable. They laughed. Maybe you pushed him too far, one said. You wanted to see him beg, and instead you broke him. Now he's out there with some younger woman, enjoying himself while you sit here panicking. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't think he'd turn it around on me. Her friends weren't laughing anymore. Their tone shifted, sharp, almost fearful. They hadn't planned for this ending either. And that was the beauty of it. They thought they were pulling strings, but I'd cut the whole puppet show down in one stroke. I let them stew for another hour before making my move. I came downstairs casually, phone in hand, wearing that grin that I knew would eat away at her. Afternoon, ladies, I said warmly. Don't mind me. Just heading out for a bit. Helen's eyes snapped to the phone. Where are you going? She asked too quickly. I paused, thumb hovering over the screen. Nowhere important. Just meeting someone for coffee. The way her jaw clenched, the way her friends leaned in. Oh, it was delicious. I slipped on my jacket and left without another word. Truth was, I drove to the hardware store, picked up a box of nails, and sat in the parking lot for half an hour. But I knew Helen's mind would be spinning the entire time I was gone. By the time I got home, she was pacing the living room. Who were you with? She demanded, voice trembling. I set the bag of nails on the counter. Bought hardware. Don't play games with me, Patrick. I leaned close, lowering my voice. Helen, the game started when you and your friends decided to see if you could make me beg. But now, I straightened, smiling cold. Now, I'm the one writing the rules. Her friends sat frozen, wide-eyed, unsure whether to stay or bolt. And that's when I dropped the next match on the gasoline. By the way, I said casually, pulling my phone from my pocket, I've been keeping track of things too. Not just you, all of you. Their laughter, their smirks, their confidence, gone in an instant. They had no idea what was coming. The room went still. You could have heard a pin drop. Helen blinked at me like she hadn't understood the words. Her friends looked at each other, shifting uncomfortably on the couch. What? What do you mean by that? One of them finally asked. I held up my phone, rolling it casually in my hand like a coin. You all think you're clever, don't you? Laughing, planning, treating me like a child you could push around. But you forgot something. I was listening. Helen's lips parted, her breath shaky. You recorded me? I smiled slowly. Not just you. Every smug laugh, every cruel little line. The part about how I'd beg, how I'd crumble. It's all right here. I tapped the phone. Crystal clear. One of her friends, the loud one, scoffed. You wouldn't dare. I met her eyes, my grin never slipping. Wouldn't I? Imagine your husbands, your families, your little church groups hearing the way you all talk about marriage. About loyalty. About me. Their faces blanched. Even the bold one leaned back into the couch cushions like she'd suddenly shrunk. Helen stood, hands shaking. Why would you do that? She demanded. After everything, after all these years, why would you humiliate me like this? I chuckled, low and humorless. Why? Because you tried to humiliate me first. You wanted to put me on my knees in front of them, Helen. You wanted to watch me beg. Now the shoe's on the other foot. How does it feel? Her voice cracked. Patrick, please. You don't understand. It was just talk. Just a game. A game. I stepped closer, letting my words cut. You brought our marriage into your little gossip circle. You wanted a performance. Well, here's the twist. Now I've got the stage. Her friends exchanged glances, their confidence draining by the second. One muttered something about needing to get home and grabbed her purse. No, I said firmly, stopping her in her tracks. You wanted to be part of this. You stay until the end. You'll want to hear what comes next. Helen's voice was barely above a whisper. What are you planning? I let the silence stretch until her hands trembled against her sides. Then I smiled. That depends on you. See, I could send these recordings to everyone we know. Or, I leaned in, my voice dropping. Or I could just let you twist in your own imagination, wondering when the hammer's going to drop. Wondering if tonight's the night your friends' husbands hear everything. Which do you think is worse, Helen? The blow? Or the waiting? Her eyes filled with tears. You wouldn't. But the way her voice faltered told me she wasn't sure anymore. And that uncertainty was exactly what I wanted. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. Don't worry. I won't do anything tonight. The relief on their faces lasted less than a second before I added. But tomorrow? Well, tomorrow's another story. With that, I turned and walked upstairs, leaving 4 pale, silent women in my living room. From the top of the stairs, I paused and listened. Whispers floated up. What if he's serious? One friend hissed. He's bluffing. Another whispered back, though I could hear the doubt in her tone. Helen didn't answer. She was too busy sobbing. I smiled in the dark. The begging had already begun, and not from me. What none of them realized was that I wasn't bluffing at all. I already knew exactly how I'd use those recordings. And when the time came, their laughter would cost them far more than they ever imagined. Helen didn't come to bed that night. I heard her pacing downstairs until nearly dawn, her friends whispering frantically before one by one they slipped out into the darkness. By morning, she looked like a ghost. Red eyes, messy hair, still in yesterday's clothes. She sat at the kitchen table staring at her phone like it might explode. I walked in, fresh and calm, humming as I poured my coffee. Morning, I said cheerfully. Her voice cracked. Patrick, did you send it? I took a slow sip, savoring the silence before answering. Not yet. Her hands clenched around the mug. Please, don't. Whatever you think this will prove, you'll only hurt yourself too. I leaned on the counter. Funny. That's exactly what you and your friends were saying about me last night, wasn't it? That I'd hurt myself begging, debasing myself. But when the tables turn, I smiled coldly. Suddenly it's not so fun. Her eyes brimmed with tears. It was a mistake, Patrick. Just talk. You know me. Oh, I know you, I said sharply. I know you better now than I ever wanted to. You underestimated me. And that, I tapped the phone on the counter, was your mistake. She flinched like the sound itself was a whip crack. That evening, I made my first move. Not with Helen, but with her friends. I composed a message and sent it to their group chat, the one she thought I didn't know about. I hope you ladies enjoyed the show last night. I'll let you know when Act 2 begins. I could imagine the panic, the frantic typing, the fear spreading like fire through dry grass. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, Helen burst into my office. "What did you do?" she shouted. I looked up from my desk calmly. I told them the truth, that this is a performance, and they're all part of it. She shook her head, hair falling in her face. "You're going too far." I leaned back, folding my hands. "Too far? Helen, you tried to end our marriage in front of your friends like it was a parlor trick. You wanted an audience. Well, now you have one." She sagged against the doorframe, whispering, "What do you want from me?" The words were sweet music. I stood slowly, closing the distance between us until she had to tilt her head up to meet my eyes. "I want you to feel what I felt. The uncertainty, the humiliation, the powerlessness, and I want your friends to feel it too." Her lip trembled. "How long will this go on?" I smiled. "Until I decide you've learned your lesson, or until someone begs me to stop." Her voice cracked. "So you want me to beg? Isn't that what you wanted from me?" I said softly. Funny how quickly the game changes when the begging's on the other side. I let her stand there trembling as I brushed past her, heading downstairs. That night, I uploaded the first snippet, just 10 seconds of audio, the part where one of her friends laughed and said, "Just tell him it's over and watch him beg." I didn't send it to the world. Not yet. I just sent it to their husbands. By midnight, my phone buzzed with notifications. Panic calls. Angry texts. Helen's friends weren't laughing anymore. I lay in bed smiling as Helen's phone lit up again and again, her hands shaking as she tried to explain, tried to lie, tried to contain the fire I'd just lit. The trap was no longer just around her. It was around all of them. And for the first time in years, I felt no weight on my chest, only the cold satisfaction of justice. Tomorrow, I'd raise the stakes again, because this was only the beginning. By morning, the neighborhood grapevine was already buzzing. I didn't need to eavesdrop. I could hear it in the tone of Helen's phone calls. Her friends' husbands had come down hard, demanding explanations. I sat at the breakfast table eating toast while Helen's phone buzzed nonstop beside her plate. She finally answered one. Her voice shook. "Gary, please, it wasn't serious. It was just a stupid game." From across the room, I could hear the roar of a man who'd just learned his wife spent her Friday nights mocking marriage vows. Helen pulled the phone away from her ear as if the volume might burn her. She hung up, trembling. Another call came in immediately. Then another. She buried her face in her hands. "You started this," I said casually, buttering another slice. "Actions have consequences." She glared at me, raw fury mixed with despair. "You'll destroy all of us." "All of us?" I raised an eyebrow. "Funny. You didn't seem too worried about destruction when you and your little court were planning my humiliation." Her voice cracked. "Patrick, please stop this before it goes too far." I set down my knife and leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "Helen, it already went too far the night you decided my dignity was your party trick. Now I'm just balancing the scales." She broke then, sobbing openly at the table. I watched without flinching. For the first time in years, she wasn't in control. By lunchtime, I had 3 angry voicemails from her friends' husbands. One threatened legal action. Another demanded to meet face-to-face. The third just growled that I'd better watch myself. I saved each one. Proof that my little leak had struck home. Proof that these women, who once laughed so loudly, were now scrambling to hold their marriages together. That evening, I made my next move. I invited 2 of the husbands over. Not the friendliest ones, but the angriest. They arrived red-faced, fists clenched, ready for a fight. Helen nearly fainted when she saw them at our door. "What the hell are you doing?" she hissed at me. "Hosting," I replied calmly, stepping aside to let the men in. We sat at the dining table. I poured coffee like it was a normal get-together, then played the recording, just enough to remind them why they were there. The men stared at Helen, then at each other. Their rage wasn't for me. It was for the women who had betrayed them with their cruelty. This is disgusting," one muttered. We thought it was just gossip. But to hear it, Helen tried to speak, but her voice collapsed into broken stammers. I leaned back, letting the silence stretch. "Gentlemen, I wanted you to know the truth." They wanted to see me beg. Instead, I figured they should see what begging looks like from their own wives. The men left with grim faces, muttering promises of consequences. When the door shut, Helen turned on me, wild-eyed. "Why are you doing this? You're tearing down everything." I stepped close, lowering my voice to a razor's edge. "No, Helen, you already tore it down. I'm just making sure everyone sees the rubble." She covered her face with her hands, sobbing into her palms. I let her cry, let her crumble, because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The recordings were only my first weapon. I still had the one thing she feared most, proof that her betrayal ran deeper than laughter. And soon, I'd use it. Helen barely slept that night. I heard her footsteps dragging back and forth across the upstairs hallway until sunrise. By the time I walked into the kitchen for coffee, she looked 10 years older. "You're destroying me," she whispered as I sat down. I sipped slowly, savoring her words like the finest bourbon. "No, Helen, I'm letting you destroy yourself. I'm just holding up the mirror." Her fists clenched. "Please, Patrick, whatever you want, just tell me. Money? The house? Just stop this." The irony nearly made me laugh. 2 nights ago, she and her friends were giddy imagining me begging for scraps. Now here she was, offering them herself. But I wasn't after scraps. I was after something much bigger. After breakfast, I went to my office and opened the file I'd been keeping for months. Not recordings this time, documents. Bank statements, credit card bills, receipts tucked away in drawers. I'd known for a while that money was vanishing in odd places. Withdrawals she never mentioned. Boutique purchases that never made it into our closets. I started paying attention, and what I found was enough to scorch the earth. Helen wasn't just gossiping with her friends. She was funneling thousands out of our joint account to cover their little outings, their spa days, even one of her friends' secret credit card debt. It was all there in black and white, month after month. I printed the stack and slid it into a neat manila folder. My ace. That evening, as she hovered near the window like a prisoner waiting for her sentence, I set the folder on the dining table. "What's that?" she asked nervously. "Insurance," I said. "Go on, take a look." Her hands trembled as she opened it. Line after line of withdrawals, charges, transfers. All highlighted, organized, undeniable. Her face went pale. "Where did you get this?" "From the bank. From our own records. Did you think I wouldn't notice money bleeding out? Did you think I was too stupid to read numbers?" She sank into the chair, staring at the papers like they might swallow her whole. "This isn't just gossip anymore," I continued, my voice low and sharp. "This is financial betrayal. Do you know what a divorce court does with evidence like this? With proof you've been siphoning our money to fund your little queen's circle?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Patrick, no. Please, don't take this to court. I'll lose everything." I leaned in, locking her gaze. "That's the point." Her breath came in ragged sobs. She was unraveling. The proud woman who once believed she held all the strings now reduced to begging in whispers. "Why are you doing this?" she finally gasped. "Why can't you just let it go?" I stood, pushing the chair back slowly. "Because you wanted a game, Helen. You wanted to see me beg. But here's the truth. Men like me don't beg. We build. We endure. And when we're betrayed," I tapped the folder, "we make damn sure justice is done." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing so hard her shoulders shook. I walked away, leaving the folder on the table like a loaded gun. Tomorrow, I'd pull the trigger. And when I did, Helen wouldn't just lose her friends. She'd lose everything she thought she controlled. The next day, I woke before dawn. Coffee in hand, I stared out the window as the first light cut across the yard I'd mowed 1,000 times. For 22 years, that house had been my pride. Now it was just a stage. And tonight, the curtain would fall. I called her friends' husbands first. "Come, steady. Come by at 7, I told them. "Bring your wives. You all deserve to hear the truth together." By evening, the dining room was full. For couples sat in tense silence, their wives pale, their husbands stiff with suspicion. Helen sat beside me, trembling like a child waiting for a scolding. I stood, folder in hand. 2 nights ago, these women sat in this very room and plotted a little game. I began. They told my wife to break me, to tell me our marriage was over, and then laugh as I begged. Their words, not mine. I pulled out my phone, tapped play, and let the recording speak for itself. The room filled with cruel laughter, their laughter echoing back at them from the tiny speaker. The women shrank in their chairs as their husbands' faces hardened. That was just talk. One of them began, but I raised a hand. Talk is one thing, but actions are another. I dropped the folder onto the table, the papers fanning out like a dealer's cards. These aren't jokes. These are bank statements. Thousands funneled from our accounts to cover their indulgences. Vacations, spas, debts. paid with money meant for families. The men leaned forward, scanning the pages. Anger flared in their eyes. One shoved the papers back toward his wife. "Is this true?" she stammered, unable to answer. Helen tried to speak, but her voice broke. "Patrick, please." I looked at her, then at the room. My voice was calm, steady. I was supposed to be the fool, the begging husband. Instead, I chose dignity. I chose to gather proof, to expose the truth. And now, everyone knows exactly what you are. The silence was suffocating. The women sat frozen, faces blotched with shame. Their husbands stood, one by one, leaving the table in cold, furious silence. When the last door slammed shut, Helen turned to me, tears streaming. "Patrick, please, we can fix this." I shook my head slowly. "No, Helen. Some things you don't fix. Some things you bury. You wanted to see me beg. Instead, you're the one begging. And that's the ending you earned." I walked upstairs, leaving her alone at the table with the wreckage of her little empire spread out before her. The next morning, I met with my lawyer and handed her the folder, the recordings, the statements. She nodded, professional and efficient. "You'll come out of this just fine, Mr. Harris. Better than fine, actually." As I signed the papers, I felt a weight lift. Not sorrow, not regret, but freedom. Helen had played her game. I'd written the ending. And when the dust settled, I walked away not as the man who begged, but as the man who never bent. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't shouting. It isn't rage. It's walking away with your dignity intact while the ones who laughed are left choking on their own shame.